For 10 years, my parents called me jobless in front of everyone, never knowing I investigated fraud for a living. They used Grandpa's name, stole from his legacy, and turned my silence into their biggest lie. But Grandpa let them laugh until one empty chair exposed everything. I was standing behind the blue curtain of the Stillwater Creek Community Hall when my mother made the room laugh at me for the last time. She was on the small stage, holding a silver microphone in one hand and a donation card in the other, smiling like she had built kindness with her own 2 hands. My father stood beside her in his dark suit, nodding at every word. My brother sat at the front table, already acting like the night belonged to him. And my grandfather, Ephraim Brindle, sat quietly in his wheelchair beside one empty chair. That empty chair was the only seat in the entire hall nobody had touched. My mother looked toward me, even though most people could not see me behind the curtain, and said, "Our Kenna came tonight too. Don't ask what she does for work. We've been trying to figure that out for 10 years. The room laughed. Church ladies covered their mouths. Men in clean jackets shook their heads. My brother Drexel raised his glass like she had just made a toast. I felt the old heat rise in my face, the same heat I had felt at birthdays, Sunday lunches, funerals, and every family event where my parents turned my name into a joke. Then my phone buzzed in my hand. It was one text from Grandpa. 8 words. "Not yet, Kenny girl. Wait for the last chair." I looked at him through the gap in the curtain. He did not look weak. He did not look confused. He looked like a man who had measured the room, counted every liar, and decided exactly where the truth would sit. My name is Kenna Brindle. I was 34 years old that night, and for almost 10 years, my parents told everyone in Stillwater Creek, Missouri, that I was jobless. Not between jobs, not private about work, jobless, useless, floating, wasting my education. They said it at the grocery store when they thought I could not hear them. They said it at church dinners, while people passed rolls and pretended not to enjoy the cruelty. They said it at my cousin's baby shower, where my mother told 6 women that I worked on a laptop doing nothing important. They said it in front of my grandfather because they thought his silence meant agreement. But Grandpa never agreed. He just watched. He had been watching for years. What my parents never understood was that I did have a job. I worked from home because most of my work was digital, confidential, and buried inside documents people hoped nobody would read. I was a forensic compliance reviewer. In simple words, I investigated fake nonprofits, grant misuse, charity fraud, and financial records that did not match the story people told in public. I had reviewed church funds, youth programs, housing grants, elderly aid accounts, and community projects that looked beautiful on posters and rotten in bank statements. I spent my days finding missing money inside polite language. My parents called me jobless because my work did not wear boots or carry a hammer. In my family, work only counted if it made noise. A truck engine, a cash register, a saw blade. My work was quiet, so they decided it was nothing. Grandpa Ephraim understood quiet work. He had built chairs for 52 years inside a long wooden shop behind his house on Millbend Road. The sign outside still said Brindle Chair Works, though half the paint had peeled away by the time this story began. When I was little, he let me sit on an upside-down bucket while he sanded oak legs smooth enough to feel like river stones. He taught me that a good chair should hold weight without bragging. He said the strongest pieces were usually hidden underneath, where nobody looked unless something broke. On my high school graduation day, he gave me a small brass measuring tape and said, "Measure twice, cut once, speak last." I kept that measuring tape in my desk drawer through college, through my first audit job, through every year my parents acted like my life had never become anything. Grandpa was the only person in my family who asked real questions. He never asked how much I made. He asked what kind of pattern I had found that week. He never asked why I was not married. He asked if people still lied badly on paper. When I told him that most fraud looked normal until one number sat in the wrong chair, he laughed so hard he had to wipe his eyes. "Then keep counting chairs," he told me. "Fools always forget one." My mother, Sabra Brindle, cared more about being respected than being kind. She ran the church hospitality table, organized casseroles for sick neighbors, and knew how to make concern sound like music. She could place a hand on someone's shoulder and make the whole town believe she had a heart big enough for everyone. But at home, she measured love by usefulness. Drexel, my older brother, was useful because people saw him. He sold houses, shook hands, sponsored Little League banners, and wore shirts with his name stitched over the pocket. My father, Cortland, had once owned a small contracting business before bad estimates, worse debts, and one failed development deal ruined him. He still talked like a builder, but by the time I was 24, he had more unpaid bills than tools. I left Stillwater Creek after college because my first job was in Kansas City, and later I moved to remote work. That became the family story. Kenna left, Kenna disappeared. Kenna hides in an apartment and pretends to work. Every year the joke got easier for them. They did not know that while they laughed, I was testifying in depositions, preparing fraud summaries, and helping recover money from people who used charity like a costume. The first time I knew something was wrong with Grandpa's workshop was not because of a bank record. It was because of rain. I drove to Stillwater Creek one Saturday in March to bring him pecan muffins from a bakery he loved. The sky had been gray all morning, and by the time I pulled behind his house, water was dripping through 3 places in the shop roof. Buckets sat on the floor, catching leaks. A back window had cardboard taped over it. His best lathe was gone. The shelves where he used to keep walnut boards were almost empty. I found Grandpa sitting near the workbench with a blanket over his knees, staring at a half-built rocking chair. "Where's your lumber?" I asked. He rubbed one thumb over the armrest. His hands were swollen, the joints rough and bent, but his eyes were clear. "According to your mother," he said, "I have received a great deal of lumber." He nodded toward a flyer pinned to the wall. I stepped closer. It was printed in glossy color with my mother's smiling face, my father's name, Drexel's real estate logo, and Grandpa's old workshop in the background. The title read, "The Ephraim Brindle Community Chair Fund." Under it, the mission statement promised to restore Brindle Chair Works, teach woodworking to troubled teens, build furniture for elderly residents, and honor Grandpa's legacy. I read the words twice. Then I looked at the buckets catching rainwater. "Grandpa," I said carefully, "how much money have they raised?" He looked at the unfinished chair. Enough that this roof should not know the weather. I asked him why he had not called me sooner. He smiled, but it made me sadder than if he had cried. "Because you told me once that loose proof is just noise. I wanted a whole song." That was when he opened the drawer of his workbench and showed me the first envelope. It was from Mrs. Oletta Grange, the widow who lived 2 houses down. She had donated $800 in cash after my mother told her the money would buy a new roof for the workshop. The envelope had Oletta's name written in blue ink. On the corner, Grandpa had made a tiny mark with a carpenter's pencil. Then he opened a small notebook and showed me a line written in his slow block letters. "Oletta Grange, $800, roof, March 4th, collected by Sabra, no receipt." I felt my professional mind wake up inside my daughter's heart. The tone of my voice changed before I could stop it. "Are there more?" Grandpa reached under the blanket, pulled out a second notebook, then a third. "There are always more when people think an old man has stopped counting." For the next 6 weeks, I did what I had done in cases across 3 states, except this time the names on the documents were mine. I searched the fund registration. The Ephraim Brindle Community Chair Fund had been filed as a small community nonprofit with Cortland as operations director, Sabra as community chair, and Drexel as outreach coordinator. Grandpa was listed as honorary founder, which sounded harmless, until I found the grant application attached to it. His signature was on 3 forms. I knew immediately it was wrong. Grandpa's real signature leaned left because arthritis pulled his fingers inward. The grant signature leaned right and ended with a loop he had never used in his life. The fund had collected donations from at least 43 people. It had received a small county development grant. It had paid invoices to 3 vendors. 2 vendors had addresses that led to empty lots. One belonged to a mailbox inside a shipping store. There were payments marked youth workshop supplies. but no youth workshop had ever happened. There were payments marked elder chair delivery, but Mrs. Oletta told me she never received the chair my mother had promised her. There was one transfer for $4,900 to a marketing company that, after 15 minutes of searching, I connected to Drexel's real estate ads. The deeper I looked, the colder I felt. My parents had not only built a lie, they had invited the town to donate to it. The worst document arrived on a Thursday afternoon. Grandpa had asked the county clerk for a copy of the grant file using his own name, and Oletta picked it up for him because my mother had started helping with his mail. Inside the file was a budget explanation signed by my father. One paragraph said part of the fund had been delayed because the family was providing ongoing support to an unemployed adult daughter, Kenna, whose living instability has created financial strain during the restoration period. I read that sentence standing in my kitchen, and for a moment I could not breathe. They had used the insult as paperwork. For years they had laughed at me in public, but privately they had used their lie to explain missing money. I was not just the family joke. I was their accounting excuse. I called Grandpa and read the paragraph out loud. He was quiet for a long time, then he said, "I'm sorry, Kenny girl." Not because he had written it, not because he believed it, because he knew what it feels like when someone uses your name to make theft look reasonable. I wanted to drive to Stillwater Creek that night and put every record on my parents' kitchen table. I wanted to tell my mother exactly what I did for a living and watch the color leave her face. I wanted to tell my father that fake invoices are not family business. They are evidence. But Grandpa stopped me. "No," he said. "You do not hand people loose nails. You bring the whole chair." That was his way of telling me to wait until everything was connected. So I waited. I built a timeline. I matched donations to deposits. I compared invoices to business registrations. I interviewed Oletta and 2 other donors who trusted me enough to speak quietly. I found photos of the workshop taken at fund events, where my mother stood in front of the good side of the building so nobody saw the broken window behind it. I found a recording Grandpa had made during a family meeting because he said his hearing was bad, and he wanted to listen again later. In the recording, my father's voice came through clearly. "Nobody checks charity money in a town this small," he said. "They see Ephraim's name and they open their wallets." Then my mother laughed and said, "As long as Kenna stays useless, we can always say family costs slowed us down." I listened to that part once. Then I saved 3 copies. The dinner was announced 2 weeks later. Sabra called it the Brindle Legacy Dinner, a public fundraiser and recognition night at the Stillwater Creek Community Hall. The flyer said the family would honor Grandpa Ephraim, announce the next stage of the workshop restoration, and present Drexel as Director of Community Outreach. My name was not on the flyer, but my mother called me anyway. "You should come," she said. Her voice was sweet in the way cheap frosting is sweet, all sugar and no food. "It would look strange if Ephraim's granddaughter wasn't there. Just wear something decent and don't talk about whatever internet thing you do." I almost laughed. "I'll be there," I said. She paused, probably surprised I had not argued. Then she added, "And Kenna, please don't embarrass us by acting sensitive. People joke because they care." I looked at the folder of evidence on my desk. "I know why people joke, Mom." She did not understand what I meant. She would. Grandpa planned the seating himself. That should have warned them, but they were too busy enjoying the sound of their own names. He asked for 25 chairs at the front table. Not 24, not 26. 25, my mother told him the hall had plenty of chairs, and he did not need to worry. Grandpa told her that a chair maker always worries about chairs. He wrote the seating list in pencil. Under some chairs, he carved small initials near the back leg, so low nobody would see unless they were looking. 1 chair for Oletta, 1 for Pastor Amos Treadle, 1 for the county grant representative, 1 for Drexel, 1 for Sabra, 1 for Cortland, 1 for me near the side, because my mother insisted I not sit at the center, and 1 empty chair beside Grandpa with no initials at all. When I visited him the day before the dinner, he was sitting in the shop with the unfinished rocking chair in front of him. He tapped the seat. "Inside this," he said, "is the ledger they thought was just old man scribbling." I ran my hand over the smooth wood. "Are you sure you want to do it this way?" He looked toward the leaking roof, then at the photo of my grandmother that still hung above his bench. "Your parents built a room full of lies," he said. "I want the truth to have witnesses." The night of the dinner, the community hall smelled like roast chicken, coffee, floor polish, and too many flowers. My mother had decorated every table with cream-colored cloths and little wooden chair centerpieces, like the whole event was pure love. A banner over the stage read, "Honoring Ephraim Brindle's Legacy." People came in smiling, carrying checks and envelopes. They hugged my mother. They shook my father's hand. They told Drexel he was a good grandson for keeping the family name alive. I stood near the service curtain with my evidence folder in a black tote bag at my feet. Nobody asked why I was there alone. Nobody asked why Grandpa had insisted Oleta sit close to him. Nobody asked why the empty chair beside him had a folded name card with no name written on it. That is the thing about people who trust a public image. They stop noticing details. And details are where lies usually begin to bleed. My mother started the program at 7:15. She walked onto the stage with her microphone and thanked everyone for supporting a dream bigger than one family. My father spoke next. He said the restoration had faced delays because materials were expensive, labor was hard to find, and the family had carried many private burdens. His eyes moved toward me when he said private burdens. Drexel followed with a speech about service, growth, and bringing young people into trades. He used the word legacy 9 times. Then my mother took the microphone back, and I knew from the way her smile sharpened that she had reached the part she had been waiting for. "Family is complicated," she said. "Some children stay and build. Some children wander and need time to find themselves." A soft laugh moved through the room. She looked straight toward the curtain. "Our Kenna is here tonight. We love her, of course. Don't ask what she does. We've been trying to solve that mystery for a decade." The laugh was louder this time. Drexel leaned toward the microphone on the front table and said, "Don't worry, Kenna. We saved you a chair. It doesn't come with a paycheck either." People laughed again. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to fill the room. Enough to reach Grandpa. He sat still through all of it. His hands rested on his cane. His face did not change. I looked down at my phone when his text came. "Not yet, Kenny girl. Wait for the last chair." So I waited. I let my mother enjoy the laughter. I let my brother sit in the glow of a room that did not know it had been used. I let my father pat his jacket pocket where donation envelopes had already started to collect. If you have ever been mocked by people who never asked what you carried, you know how hard silence can be. But silence is not always surrender. Sometimes silence is a locked drawer. Sometimes it is a sealed folder. Sometimes it is an empty chair waiting for the right person to sit down. At 7:32, the back doors opened. A man in a navy coat stepped inside carrying a leather folder. He was tall, gray-haired, and calm in a way that made several people turn around before they knew why. I knew him as Nixon Farrow, the county financial examiner assigned after Grandpa made a formal complaint through Oleta's attorney. My mother did not know him. My father did. I saw recognition hit Cortland's face like cold water. Nixon walked down the center aisle without rushing. The room quieted one table at a time. Grandpa lifted one hand and pointed to the empty chair beside him. Nixon sat down. The last chair was filled. Grandpa placed both hands on his cane and slowly stood. Oleta moved to help him, but he gave her a small nod that meant, "Not yet." The microphone on the front table picked up the scrape of his chair legs against the floor. Every eye turned toward him. "Thank you for coming," Grandpa said. His voice was soft, but the room had become so quiet that everyone heard him. "I asked that we not begin the real business of tonight until the last chair was filled." My mother laughed nervously. "Daddy, we already started the program." Grandpa looked at her. "No, Sabra, you started the performance." The words went through the hall like a door opening in a storm. My father stood halfway from his seat. Ephraim, maybe we should talk in private. Grandpa lifted one finger. You have used my name in public. You will hear my answer in public. Drexel's face tightened. Pastor Amos looked down at his plate. My mother's smile had disappeared completely. Grandpa turned slightly toward me. Kenny girl, he said, bring the chair. I walked from behind the curtain, carrying the unfinished rocking chair seat and the black tote bag. Nobody laughed then. They watched me set the wooden seat on the front table beside the donation basket. Grandpa took a small screwdriver from his jacket pocket. His hands shook, so I helped him loosen the bottom panel. Inside the hollow space was a stack of folded pages wrapped in oilcloth. The room leaned forward without meaning to. Grandpa touched the packet like it was something alive. This is my ledger, he said. Not the one my daughter showed donors. Mine. Nixon Farrow opened his folder and stood beside him. For the record, Nixon said, Mr. Ephraim Brindle submitted this ledger with supporting evidence as part of a financial misconduct complaint involving the Ephraim Brindle Community Chair Fund. My mother whispered, No. It was the first honest word I had heard from her all night. Then Grandpa looked at the room that had laughed at me and said the line I will remember for the rest of my life. Kenna was never jobless. She was doing the work none of you had the patience to understand. He turned toward my parents. And she knows how to read the kind of paper you used to rob people. My mother stood so fast, her chair tipped backward. How dare you say that about your own family? Grandpa did not raise his voice. I am saying it because you are my family. He nodded to me. My mouth was dry, but my hands were steady. I opened my folder and placed the first set of documents on the table. My name is Kenna Brindle, I said. For the past 10 years, I have worked as a forensic compliance reviewer. I investigate nonprofit fraud, grant misuse, false vendor billing, and misappropriation of donated funds. I am not here as the official investigator on this case because this is my family. Mr. Farrow and the county office are handling that. I am here because my grandfather asked me to explain what these records mean. I started with the donations. Oleta Grange, $800, recorded by Grandpa, never deposited into the fund account. Marvin Pell, $1,200 for wheelchair-accessible workbenches, deposited 3 weeks late and withdrawn 2 days later as consulting. The church youth group, $640 raised through a bake sale, listed as lumber purchase, but no lumber order existed. Then the grant money. The county development grant had been approved for safety repairs, youth training materials, and senior furniture delivery. Instead, the fund paid a marketing company connected to Drexel's real estate ads, 2 fake vendors with no business licenses, and a personal credit card held by Cortland Brindle. Nixon confirmed each point with certified records. My father kept saying, "That's not the full context," but he never gave the context. People who are caught often ask for context because the facts are too simple. Then I placed the grant form on the table. This signature is listed as Ephraim Brindle's authorization, I said. It is not his signature. My mother snapped, "You are not a handwriting expert." Grandpa said, "No, but I am Ephraim Brindle." A few people gasped. I showed them 3 real signatures from Grandpa's old shop contracts and the grant signature beside them. Even from the back row, the difference was clear. Then Nixon played the audio recording. My father's voice filled the hall. Nobody checks charity money in a town this small. They see Ephraim's name and they open their wallets. My mother's laugh came next. As long as Kenna stays useless, we can always say family costs slowed us down. The sound of my own name in that sentence did something strange to the room. The people who had laughed earlier looked uncomfortable now because they heard themselves inside her lie. They had believed it. They had helped it work. Drexel broke first. "I didn't know about all of this," he said, standing with both hands raised. "I just handled outreach." I looked at him and placed his invoice on top of the stack. "Your outreach company received $4,900 from the fund, and the payment memo says Youth Workshop flyers. The ads purchased that same week promoted your spring real estate campaign." His mouth opened, but no sound came out. My father turned on him. Sit down, Drex. That was when everyone saw the real family, not the smiling flyer family, not the legacy dinner family, the cornered one. My mother pointed at me like I had walked in with a weapon instead of documents. You ruined your grandfather's night. Grandpa's hand came down on the table, not hard, but enough. No, he said. You used my night because you thought I was too old to stop you. He looked at the donors, the pastor, the neighbors, the people who had given money because his name still meant something. I let them laugh because I needed every chair filled. A lie told to one person can hide. A lie told to a full room has nowhere to run. Nixon Farrow announced that the county was freezing the remaining fund account pending investigation. The grant office would seek recovery. Donors would be contacted for statements. The file included possible forged authorization, false expense reporting, and misappropriation. Those words sounded heavy in the community hall, heavier than gossip, heavier than shame. My father sat down like his bones had stopped working. Drexel stared at the table. My mother still stood, but her power was gone. She looked smaller without applause. Pastor Amos rose from his chair and faced Grandpa. Ephraim, he said, voice trembling. I am sorry. I should have asked more questions. Grandpa looked tired then. Older than he had looked all night. A lot of people should have, Hereward, he said. He did not say it cruelly. That made it worse. The local newspaper ran the story 3 days later. They did not print every detail, but they printed enough. The Ephraim Brindle Community Chair Fund was suspended. Cortland resigned from the Restoration Committee before they could remove him. Sabra stepped down from the Church Hospitality Board after several donors demanded answers. Drexel lost 2 major sponsors when the payment trail showed his business had benefited from fund money. The county investigation moved slowly, the way real investigations do, but it moved. There were interviews, subpoenas, amended filings, and a restitution process. My father's attorney called it poor bookkeeping. Nixon Farrow called it a documented pattern. The judge later agreed with Nixon. Some money came back, some did not. That is the ugly truth about stolen trust. Even when the account is repaired, something remains missing. Grandpa never celebrated their fall. That was not who he was. He spent the winter in the old shop with a space heater near his feet, while licensed contractors repaired the roof with money that went through a properly monitored account. I helped set up the new board rules, conflict policies, receipt controls, and public reporting. Oleta became treasurer because she trusted numbers more than speeches. The fund was renamed Ephraim's Chair Room, and this time it did exactly what the flyer promised. By spring, 3 teenagers were learning how to sand wood without rushing. 2 elderly neighbors received custom chairs built for their height and back pain. A small brass plaque went on the wall above Grandpa's bench. It said, "A good chair holds weight quietly." Grandpa said it was too fancy. I told him to be quiet and let people honor him for once. I saw my mother only once after the hearing. She was leaving the courthouse in a gray coat, her hair pinned too tightly, her face bare of the soft public smile she had worn for years. She looked at me for a long second. I thought she might apologize. Instead, she said, "You could have warned me." I looked at the woman who had warned entire rooms not to respect me. "I did," I said. "For 10 years, I kept showing up as myself. You never checked." She walked away without answering. My father sent 1 letter through his attorney asking Grandpa to consider family unity during restitution. Grandpa sent it back unopened with a note written in pencil. Unity is not silence. Drexel left Stillwater Creek for a while. I heard he went to Springfield to work under another broker. I did not chase him for an apology. Some people need to sit alone with the story they helped tell. On a warm Saturday in May, I drove to Grandpa's workshop with the windows down. Stillwater Creek looked softer than it had in winter. The dogwoods were blooming near the courthouse, and the old community hall had a new coat of paint. When I reached the shop, the broken window was fixed, the roof was dry, and the smell of fresh sawdust met me before I opened the door. Grandpa sat near the center workbench, showing a 16-year-old boy how to sand with the grain instead of against it. He saw me and smiled, "Kenny girl," he said, "you're late." I held up coffee and 2 muffins. "I had a job," I said. He laughed, and this time the sound filled the shop without pain. After the students left, we sat together near the open door. There were chairs everywhere. Finished chairs, half-built chairs, donated chairs waiting for repair. One empty chair sat near the entrance. Plain oak, smooth arms, no name carved under the seat. I asked Grandpa who it was for. He looked at it for a long time. "For whoever comes in tired and needs to be believed." I felt tears press behind my eyes, but I did not let them fall. Grandpa reached over and tapped the brass measuring tape clipped to my bag, the same one he had given me years ago. "Measure twice," he said. I finished the sentence. "Cut once, speak last." He nodded. "And when the room is full?" I looked at the empty chair by the door, then at the man who had let them laugh until truth had witnesses. "Then speak so clearly nobody can move the chairs around." For 10 years, my parents called me jobless because they could not see my work. They laughed because silence looked like failure to them. They used my name, my absence, and my grandfather's legacy to build a room full of lies. But Grandpa had been building too, ledger by ledger, mark by mark, chair by chair. He did not save the truth because he was weak. He saved it because he knew the difference between noise and proof. That night, when the last chair was filled, he did more than expose stolen money. He gave me my name back in front of everyone who had helped take it. So, if someone has mistaken your quiet work for nothing, remember this. You do not have to shout just because people laugh. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is keep building until the truth has a place to sit. Share this story with someone who has been underestimated. Leave a comment if your silence was ever judged as failure, and subscribe for more stories where the truth always finds its chair. Commentary, lesson, and explanation. Before we leave the story behind, let's sit with it for a while, because this was not only a story about a daughter proving her parents wrong. It was about silence, reputation, family pressure, public shame, and the quiet way truth can build itself when people are too arrogant to notice. Kenna was called jobless for 10 years, but the real issue was never her job. The real issue was control. Her family wanted to control the story about her. They wanted the town to see her as a failure because that lie helped them feel bigger, cleaner, and more important. And once people accepted that lie, her parents used it for something even worse. They used her name as an excuse inside their fraud. That is the part we need to understand clearly. They did not just laugh at her, they turned that laugh into paperwork. They made her public humiliation useful to their private crime. That is why this story hits harder than a normal revenge story. It shows how a family lie can become a weapon when nobody questions it. Look at how the story starts. Kenna is not standing in a courtroom. She is not holding a microphone. She is behind a curtain, hearing her own mother mock her in front of the whole town. That scene matters because it shows us the emotional prison Kenna has lived in for years. The joke is old. The laughter is familiar. Her brother knows when to join in. Her father knows when to look toward her. The room knows when to laugh. That means this humiliation has become a routine. It is not one bad comment. It is a family tradition built around making Kenna smaller. And this is something many people understand in real life. Sometimes a family chooses one person to be the easy joke, the one who can take it, the one who is too sensitive if they respond, but too weak if they stay quiet. Kenna has been placed in that role for 10 years. Her silence is not because she has nothing to say. Her silence is because she knows the truth is bigger than one argument. Now, let's talk about the title, because the title is not only dramatic, it explains the whole structure of the story. Grandpa let them laugh until the last chair was filled. This means Grandpa was not passive. He was not sitting there because he was weak. He was waiting because he understood timing. A chairmaker knows that every part must fit before the chair can hold weight. In the same way, Grandpa knew that every witness, every document, and every lie had to be in the same room before the truth could hold. If he spoke too early, Sabra and Cortland could deny it. If Kenna spoke too early, they could call her bitter, jealous, or unstable. But when the last chair was filled, the room changed. It was no longer gossip against gossip. It was proof in front of witnesses. That is the power of the last chair. It turns a family argument into a public record. Kenna's parents mocked her because they did not understand her work. But let's be honest, they also did not want to understand it. If they had asked real questions, they might have learned that she was trained to read the exact kind of fraud they were hiding. But arrogant people do not ask questions. They decide they already know. Sabra saw a daughter who worked from home and called it laziness. Cortland saw a daughter without a visible office and called it failure. Drexel saw a sister who did not perform success in the same public way he did. So he treated her like a joke. This is one of the most important lessons in the story. Some people only respect work when it looks familiar to them. If your work is quiet, private, digital, creative, remote, emotional, or behind the scenes, they may act like it is not real. But a job does not become real only because other people understand it. Your discipline does not need their permission. The story also shows how public image can hide private corruption. Sabra looks like a respected woman. She works with church events. She smiles in public. She talks about legacy, family, and service. Cortland stands beside her in a suit, using soft words like restoration and community. Drexel uses the language of growth and outreach. Everything looks clean from the outside. But that is exactly how this kind of betrayal works. It hides under nice words. In the story, the charity fund is supposed to repair Grandpa's workshop, teach teens, and help elderly neighbors. That sounds beautiful. Who would question that? But behind the flyer, the roof is still leaking. Behind the speeches, the tools are missing. Behind the donation basket, the money is moving into personal accounts and fake vendors. This is a strong reminder. We should never confuse appearance with integrity. A person can know the right words and still do the wrong thing. Grandpa Ephraim is the quiet center of the whole story. He is not loud. He does not fight like a younger man. He does not storm into rooms or expose everyone immediately. Instead, he records, marks, saves, counts, and waits. His strength is not physical power. His strength is patience with purpose. This is why he becomes the hero at the end. He does not rescue Kenna by shouting that she is a good person. He rescues her by making the truth impossible to deny. That is a deeper kind of love. Many people say they believe in us, but they do nothing when the room laughs. Grandpa does more than believe in Kenna. He builds a case strong enough to clear her name. He knows that in a room full of people who enjoy gossip, love alone may not be enough. Proof is needed. So he gives her proof. The chair symbol is very important. A chair is simple. It is ordinary. But in this story, it becomes a language. Grandpa built chairs his whole life, so he sees the world through them. A chair is about support. It carries weight. It gives someone a place. When Kenna is pushed to the side, it means her family has denied her proper place. When the empty chair sits beside Grandpa, it means the truth still has a place waiting. When Nixon Farrow sits in that chair, the truth enters the room with authority. And when the story ends with one empty chair near the workshop door, it means the space is now for anyone who needs to be believed. That is beautiful because the same object that was used for a trap becomes a symbol of healing. At first, the chair is about exposure. At the end, it is about welcome. One of the strongest emotional turns in the story is when Kenna discovers that her parents used her jobless reputation inside official documents. That is the moment the story becomes more personal. Before that, the insult is painful but familiar. After that, it becomes strategic. They were not just careless with her name, they were using it. They wrote that the family had financial strain because they were supporting an unemployed adult daughter. Think about how cruel that is. They created a false image of Kenna, repeated it in public until people believed it, and then used that belief to cover missing money. This is how lies become systems. A lie repeated enough times can turn into a tool. It can affect reputation, relationships, money, trust, and legal records. That is why silence around false stories can be dangerous. Sometimes the lie is not just hurting your feelings. Sometimes it is building a cage around your name. Kenna's restraint is another major lesson. She could have exposed them early. She could have screamed at her mother. She could have posted online, called everyone, or thrown the evidence on the kitchen table. But she does not. Grandpa tells her, "You do not hand people loose nails. You bring the whole chair." That line explains the discipline of the story. Emotional truth is real, but emotional truth alone may not stop a skilled liar. Kenna needs documents, she needs records, she needs witness statements, she needs a timeline, she needs someone official in the room. This does not mean people should stay silent forever. It means that when you are dealing with people who twist every word, you must be careful with timing. You do not give them pieces they can hide. You bring the full structure. Let's also look at Drexel. He is not the main planner, but he is not innocent either. He benefits from the lie. He joins the jokes. He accepts money connected to the fake fund. He likes being the golden child. This kind of character is important because in many family betrayals, there is not only one villain. There are also people who support the villain because the system gives them comfort. Drexel may not have created every fake invoice, but he enjoyed the power that came from Kenna being pushed down. He did not need to understand all the fraud to know something was wrong. He saw the workshop was not repaired. He saw Grandpa was not being honored properly. He saw his sister being mocked again and again, but because the lie helped him stay important, he stayed quiet. That is the lesson. When you benefit from someone else being mistreated, your silence is not neutral. Sabra is a powerful villain because she understands image. She knows how to speak in public. She knows how to turn cruelty into a joke. She says things that sound harmless enough for people to laugh, but sharp enough to wound. This is a common tactic. A person can insult you and then hide behind humor. If you react, they say you are sensitive. If you stay quiet, they continue. Sabra has used this method for years, but her mistake is thinking that public laughter equals truth. It does not. A room can laugh and still be wrong. A crowd can clap for a lie. A family can repeat a story until it feels normal, but normal is not the same as honest. Cortland's mistake is different. He thinks small-town trust will protect him. He says, "Nobody checks charity money in a town this small." That sentence reveals his whole mindset. He does not respect the donors. He does not respect Grandpa's name. He does not respect the community. He sees trust as something to use. This is why the audio recording is such an important piece of evidence. It does not only prove what he did, it proves how he thought. He believed kindness made people easy to fool. He believed reputation was stronger than records. But records do not care how charming you are. Bank transfers do not care how many people shook your hand. Fake vendors do not become real because you wore a suit. The dinner scene works so well because the villains expose themselves before Kenna exposes them. Sabra makes the joke. Drexel joins in. Cortland talks about private burdens. They all perform the lie in front of everyone. That matters because Grandpa wanted the room to see the difference between their words and the evidence. If Kenna had simply accused them, people might have said it was family drama. But when the audience first hears the mockery and then hears the documents, the truth lands harder. The same people who laughed must now sit with the fact that they helped shame an innocent person. That is why Pastor Amos apologizes. He realizes that not asking questions made him part of the problem. His apology is not the center of the story, but it is important. It shows that bystanders have responsibility too. When Kenna finally reveals her profession, the moment is satisfying because it does not feel like bragging. She is not saying, "Look how successful I am." She is saying, "This is why I know what these records mean." That makes the reveal stronger. Her job is not just a status twist. It is the key that unlocks the truth. For 10 years, her parents called her jobless because her work was invisible to them. Then, in one room, her invisible work becomes the most visible thing there. She explains false vendor billing, misappropriation, forged authorization, and grant misuse in clear language. She does not need to insult them back. The evidence does that for her. This is a mature revenge pattern. She does not become cruel to beat cruel people. She becomes clear. Grandpa's line, "You had 10 years to laugh, I need 10 minutes" is one of the emotional anchors of the commentary. It shows the difference between noise and truth. The family took years of public space to build a false image of Kenna. Grandpa only needs a short time because he has the facts. That is a powerful idea. Lies often need constant maintenance. They need repeated jokes, repeated excuses, repeated performances. Truth may take longer to prepare, but when it arrives complete, it does not need as much time. It stands on its own. The aftermath is also important because the story does not pretend everything becomes perfect. Some money comes back, some does not. The family does not suddenly become loving. Sabra does not give a beautiful apology. Cortland tries to use family unity as a shield. Drexel leaves town instead of facing everything directly. This makes the ending feel more real. Justice does not always mean everyone becomes sorry. Sometimes justice means the harm stops. Sometimes it means the record is corrected. Sometimes it means the person who was mocked finally gets to live without carrying the lie. That is what Kenna receives. She gets her name back. Grandpa's workshop becoming Ephraim's chair room gives the story a healing shape. The fake charity becomes a real community space. The same idea that was used for fraud is rebuilt with honest rules. This matters because the story does not end with only punishment. It ends with restoration. That is a better kind of victory. The workshop roof is repaired. Teenagers learn woodworking. Elderly neighbors receive chairs that actually help them. The money is monitored. The receipts are real. The public reports are clear. In other words, the family lie is replaced with a working truth. Grandpa's legacy is no longer something people use. It becomes something people can sit in, touch, and trust. One lesson from this story is that quiet people are not always powerless. Sometimes they are watching. Sometimes they are saving receipts. Sometimes they are learning. Sometimes they are healing. Sometimes they are waiting until the right moment. Kenna's parents mistook her quiet life for emptiness. They thought because she did not explain herself, she had nothing to explain. That was their biggest mistake. You never know what someone is building in silence. You never know what skill, discipline, pain, or proof they carry. So when people laugh at someone who is quiet, they may not be seeing weakness. They may be standing too close to a truth they are not ready for. Another lesson is that family does not have the right to rewrite your identity. Blood does not give someone permission to define your life. Parents can misunderstand their children, siblings can judge each other, relatives can repeat false stories. But none of that makes the story true. Kenna's parents had a version of her that helped them feel powerful. But their version was not reality. It was a tool. And that is why Kenna's final freedom comes when the truth is spoken in the same room where the lie was enjoyed. Sometimes private healing is not enough when the damage was public. Sometimes the correction also needs witnesses. We should also talk about the bystanders in the hall. Many of them laughed because it was easier than thinking. That is a small action, but small actions help big lies survive. Every time someone laughs at a cruel joke, the person telling it feels approved. Every time someone looks away from an unfair story, the lie gets stronger. This does not mean every bystander is evil, but it does mean we all have a duty to ask better questions. When a family always makes one person the joke, ask why. When a respected person always needs someone else to look small, ask what they are hiding. When a charity raises money but nothing changes, ask for records. Questions are not disrespect. Honest people can handle questions. The biggest life lesson is this: do not confuse being underestimated with being defeated. Kenna was underestimated for 10 years, but those years did not destroy her. They trained her patience. They sharpened her eye. They gave her the strength to stand still while the room laughed. And when the moment came, she did not need to become loud. She needed to be prepared. That is a message many viewers can take personally. Maybe someone has called your work useless. Maybe your family does not understand your path. Maybe people think your quiet season means you're failing, but your life is not measured by their jokes. Keep building, keep learning, keep your records, keep your character. One day, the same people who laughed may have to sit in the room your truth built. In the end, Grandpa is the heart of this story because he gives Kenna more than defense. He gives her dignity. He does not only say, "My granddaughter has a job." He says, in his own way, "My granddaughter has value, and I saw it when you refused to." That is the kind of support that changes a person. Not loud support for show. Quiet support with action behind it. Grandpa let them laugh, but he did not let the lie win. He waited until every chair was filled because he knew that truth does not always need to arrive first. It needs to arrive whole. So when we look at this story, we are not just watching a family get exposed. We are watching a false identity fall apart. We are watching public shame turn back on the people who created it. We are watching an old man prove that wisdom can be stronger than volume. And we are watching a woman learn that she never needed the room to believe in her before she could be real. She was real the whole time. Her work was real. Her pain was real. Her patience was real. The room was just late. That is the final message here. If someone has been laughing at your quiet work, let them laugh if you must, but do not stop building. Do not let their limited view become your truth. And when your moment comes, do not bring anger alone. Bring clarity, bring character, bring proof. Because sometimes the strongest answer is not a scream. Sometimes it is one empty chair, one final witness, and a truth that finally has nowhere left to hide. The end.